A link below to that song.
The blob don't kill, the blob don't burn, but the fuel still melts and the tides still turn. The blob don't burn, the blob don't kill, but the fish still starve and the bones lie still. The blob don't kill, the blob don't burn, but the truth stays buried where the dead things fill.
Alrighty, call into these shows. I'm Dana, by the way. You can call into these shows at 709-589-4406. Rocking it out again. What I call my happy songs. There's such a thing in the nuclear industry. This is it. From the one and only James Lucid on YouTube. Links are below in the comments section, or the chat room. If you're watching this within 12 hours of the show, you won't be able to see the chat. It takes 12 hours for it to show back up again. It's called The Scientists and Their Blob at James Lucid site on YouTube. Just loving it. 709-589-4406 is the big number, is the big shot number. And the song is about an extinction event, which is quite appropriate considering the poll we have for everybody tonight. What you say? What's up, my dog? Is the nuclear industry's perpetual radioactive fallout from 1,000 fuel pools, there's 1,000 plus fuel pools worldwide. Each reactor typically, particularly the boiling water reactor, there's 70 of them in the United States alone. But the Japan's reactors are exact identicals, right to the colors. Everything's identical. They kept decades of reactor cores at the top of the buildings. They're still active. Once you put them in the chain reaction, they're splitting atoms. When you take it out of the reactor core, the only difference is there's no containment. It's still splitting atoms. And you don't need a meltdown. You don't need nuclear dumps. You just need perpetual radioactive fallout. We have both. Not cool, man. It's not cool at all. It's going to be interesting. I'm going to get into the universities and do lectures. And then anybody who questions my narrative, before I show them that picture, I'll ask them, is Unit 4 melted down? And the official story is no, right? We'll play those videos without the depictions. And say, well, who are you going to believe? Do you believe the mainstream media, or are you going to believe what I'm telling you tonight? That's the question you got to ask yourself the rest of the night. And then you start in, you show them these pictures, and you say, well, do you really think that the journalists that are saying they're on top of that building are on top of that building? If you do, you're probably in the wrong place. It's insane, right? Because that a couple of buildings could cause an issue, but the problem is that the fuel pools are just as big as the issue as a nuclear meltdown, and because there's 1,000 nuclear meltdowns every day on this planet, except you can't see it or smell it or hear it or taste it. It's the emissions from the fuel pool, and I have a great way of explaining that. Sometimes. There's nothing on the planet has an autoimmune trigger that can defend against this stuff. The whole story is insane. So this was a xenon-133, million atoms, disposition radioactive fallout on the ground. And you say, well, it's only got a short half-life. Yeah, but there's another plume exactly identical that is neptunium-239 that has a short half-life too, but then its half-life is 24,000 years, just 10 half-lives. So after 2.5 days, you end up with plutonium-239, which is it's a bone seeker. It ends up in your lung and your liver, and that you typically get 3 different tumors. Not one tumor out of the three, but three different tumors. And because the plumes covered the whole planet, now that's the only emission that'll cover the entire planet. So gas, oil, and coal emissions won't cover the planet. I got that start song. Every night it's the same thing, right? Whichever song I start off with, that's the song that's playing in my head for the rest of the show. It's not a bad thing. You just want to hear the song again. That's the only issue. Can't hear it till the show's over. I might change that rule down the road, but... So rain with 20 million particles of iodine 131 per liter fell on the United States post-Fukushima. Now, every fuel pool does this. This model is only based on the inventories that were lost, the equivalent to what was lost from a fuel pool each day. It's kind of hard to wrap your mind around it again. Don't worry, I'm getting there. The thing is, there's so many facets to the nuclear industry. So when we do a nuclear cycle, we're just all these random facets that you're normally never going to hear about if you just talk about Fukushima, for instance, right? What's fascinating is that all the fuel pools are still splitting atoms for millions of homes and businesses that they would normally power. Those atoms are still being released into the environment. There's no containment. And so there's a lot of this stuff with an incredible... So when you talk about iodine 131, 132, 133, 129, there's more iodines than that, though. That's not the only ones you got to worry about in iodines itself. So it's just a bit of a surprise that this technology wasn't stopped immediately, because you're going to poison the biosphere and every species, every insect, every bird, every plant, every animal, every tree within the first few decades. So what's going to happen over 7, 8 decades, which is where we're to right now? Because the health effects are catastrophic. I screwed up again tonight. Look at that. Sometimes the best way for me to find something, instead of going through my list, which gets so big after all these years. Okay, so here's what a fuel pool, there's 1,000 of them on the planet, but each day in a 24-hour period, so think of this model for what the model actually is, right? When the model gets to 31 days, it covers the planet in about 20 days. So right there's 20 days of radioactive fallout. This is the French government. So every fuel pool in 31 days will create a plume like this. So if the fuel pool was contained at 1,000 fuel pools worldwide, and you open up one of the fuel pool to the environment, the emissions would create a plume like this in the same time frame. It doesn't matter where the nuclear accidents happen or the releases happen, you're going to get the same plume. And you notice how it's a continuous plume covering the entire planet. So the only way that you have to just trust me for a second, even if you never heard this topic before. Think of, there's 1,000 fuel pools doing this every day, or every 31 days. But there's nothing on the planet with an autoimmune trigger that can defend against it. So your body's going to attack it with white blood cells for the rest of your life, and it's pulsing energy at the speed of light every second. So if it's in the birds, the mammals, the animals, all the species, they have to attack it, because they don't have a way of, like, if it's a flu, you get a cut on your finger, and your body will flood that from all the joints. All your joints produce white blood cells, not just your spleen, and so you'll saturate that area with white blood cells, and then it'll just repair it over 6 or 7 days, and then the cut is gone. Right now, your red blood cell count comes back up, because every white blood cell you displace in a red blood cell, carries oxygen and nutrition. And so almost every species works that way. Insects are a bit different, but they're still extremely, unbelievably vulnerable, right? Now, because there's so much of it, and you can't this is the Cesium-137, each atom in this invisible snowstorm that covers the planet in that short period of time. And you got 1,000 fuel pools doing this, but you had Fukushima was a pulse event. And that the model is only based upon venting and a small loss of inventory. It's not, the model is not based upon these losses. In fact, this is not even acknowledged. So we, just because they didn't acknowledge it doesn't mean that didn't happen. And if you'll agree with me that it happened, despite that you don't admit to it, then you have to hear me out. You have to give me, because I've been at this for a very long time, by the way. And despite your whatever bigotry or prejudice or bias, if you're pro-nuclear, whatever the case may be, you have to give me an opportunity. You have to listen to another narrative. Just because you're pro-nuclear doesn't mean you shouldn't look at both sides of it. No matter what your pro-ideology is, you should look at both sides of every argument, debate. Right? You become a better person every time you do that. And you don't need anybody witnesses. You become a better person every time you do that. You become more understanding, situationally aware, which is very important, by the way, for critical thinking skills. So officially, that never happened, and officially this never happened. But officially that happened, this happened, and officially that's the picture from the industry itself, from TEPCO and the Japanese government of Reactor 3, and that's the picture that the Japanese government released August the 24th, 2023, when the nuclear industry, orchestrated by the International Atomic Energy Agency, which is the United Nations, had moved the goalposts and said this never happened. Now, the reason they've done it because we're looking at an extinction event. And it's painfully obvious at this stage now. That's, for instance, the gray whales, there may be a couple hundred left in 3 years. 2 years, probably. But within 3 years, we'll be lucky if the 13,000 that are alive now, there'll be 200 left, and they'll be gone shortly after. It's not that there's not food in the ocean, it's just a bioaccumulated radiation, because there's so much of it. And just because they refuse to acknowledge it, like they refuse to acknowledge this happened, they refuse to acknowledge it. No, sorry, Bob, that never happened, Dana. You're full of shit, Dana. Scam artists. And now they got rumors about me now that are just desperation. It is what it is. They got me destroyed. But I'm not a bad person. If you watch the videos, you'll feel that about me. I'm actually a good person. I got good intentions. I work really hard for everybody and the species. Okay, I'm going to go do that one more time. Whales. Let's talk about the gray whales 1 second. The show last night was really boring. I was showing how it's not 14 million one-ton bags that Japan has. It's 30 million one-ton bags. So the gray whales die off feared. As starving whales migrate north. So, like, in order to, this is a major media, instead of coming out and saying all the whales are emaciated, they'll be gone in 3 or 4 years. Sorry. It's because you got paper bags and cardboard and tin cans and pop bottles. That's not going to work for that narrative, is it? 12,000 miles, and they're all emaciated. Thousands of gray whales now migrating north from Baja, California, are in such poor shape. Researchers believe, this is a conjecture and opinion, changing feeding conditions. Well, like the migratory species that they're dependent upon, the whales, because they're traveling 12,000 miles, the migratory species, they've been doing this for millions of generations. They're not just going to change their pattern. They will, though, if there's no food, and instincts will kick in, right? The whales last year were already in poor shape when they began their 12,000 mile. They were emaciated last year, not poor shape. That's completely misrepresenting the urgency and the prominence of the facts. That all the way gray whale. Now this is true for the other species, not just gray whales, because they're such big creatures, and they're showing up in places like San Francisco Harbor by huge numbers. It can't be ignored because the pictures, even from the shoreline, are showing their skeletons. And so how do you get rid of 12 inches of blubber? Well, you traveled 12,000 miles with no food. You were short on food before that, per se. The whales we are seeing are extremely emaciated. When a whale is considered extremely emaciated, you can't have extremely emaciated whales and healthy whales traveling at the same time. You get me? You feel me? You hear me? So they're all emaciated. You can't have healthy whales with a whole bunch of emaciated whales. Does that make sense to anybody? They have bulging ribs with shoulder blades and vertebrae visible even from the shore. Instead of saying, and you can see their rib cages and their shoulder blades and vertebrae, which you should never ever see on a whale from the coastline. Again, they refuse to just tell the story. It is what it is, right? And the nuclear industry is the reason behind. That's the reason the food chain is broken. Saying changing feeding conditions, they got to apply that to every species because they're all showing up emaciated on the migratory routes, for instance, and the mammals in the ocean. And playing this game that they're playing it's unconscionable that people are willing to stoop to that low. The mothers are likely too unhealthy to birth, and so they're acknowledging, instead of saying there was only 80 babies out of 13,000 whales, they say the mothers are likely too unhealthy to birth and feed healthy babies, suggesting that an emaciated whale is somehow magically going to have a healthy baby. It doesn't work that way either. If it does have a baby, the baby's going to be emaciated. We've seen examples of that recently, like killer whales, where the babies were 2 days old with, you can see the rib cage and he had a peanut head, and that the mother was acknowledged as emaciated. But what is the catalyst? All of this is post-Fukushima, and that the emissions from Japan, it's the same thing as pretending that never happened, which is what they're doing. They're pretending that never happened. That never happened. Oh, I'm a lawyer by saying that. I'm a bad person. I'm a scumbag. I deserve to be destroyed, have my reputation destroyed because I'm telling you that happened. That's why they're destroying me. Because I'm a bastard, maybe. A little bit to do with it, too. Who knows for sure, but... and that they could never have the fortitude of someone like you. And they hate that, right? They despise that. They can pretend all they want. They got lots of more, they got endless monies for the industry, everything else. But they don't have courage, right? They don't have integrity. And and that bothers them, right? Deep down, that no matter how much money they got, and how much toys and everything else they got, and prominence in their communities, they don't have respect in the context of themselves. They can't respect themselves. They can't pretend that they're good people. And that's something they have to live with. And so they never get to enjoy the things they got as much as they would if they had any integrity. And so the truth is their biggest enemy. It's their mortal enemy. And so you don't see nuclear academics showing up in my comments section correcting me, right? Because they're going to have to agree that the buildings are gone. They're going to have to agree the fuel pools are gone. They can't come in and say it's not. There's no argument they can win. And then the real story, because that's all I'm telling you, is the actual story. I'm not some super smart person or something like that. I haven't got the pedigree that any of these academics do. I'm just an honest person who said, well, what does the buildings look like? Here's what the buildings look like. Well, that's the official story. The official story is that never happened. Well, but it clearly happened. So how do you beat me in that argument when it happened? And it's even crazier, though, because on the 15th, all the academic communities worldwide was well aware, painfully aware. This was March the 15th. This is day 4. Picture. 4 meltdowns in a row. Once you lose water, the reactor and the fuel pool needs to have power because of cooling. They're dependent on external power. So let's look at this again. I'm trying to tell a story. I was out on the motorcycle again today doing the coastline. I seen 2 birds today. It was amazing. I never got a picture because there was only a little gap on that part of the coastline on the highway, but there were 2 birds. It was really something. I pulled over and cried. I was so happy. It was amazing. I don't normally get to see a bird, let alone 2. In your face, nuclear. I seen 2 live birds today. You haven't got them all yet, you bastards. Fukushima plume model shows 1 million atoms over the west coast. See, when you put square meter, like cubic meter would be air, so that would be appropriate for over the west coast. 1 million cubic atoms. Becquerel, the BQ is called Becquerel. It describes an explosion of the physical atom each second. So gas, oil, and coal emissions, carbon doesn't explode and destroy everything every second. It's a nuclear explosion every second, sometimes for millions of years. It's the damnedest technology conceivable. It's a technology that is the opposite of what you would want on a planet because the element is not indigenous to the solar system. That's why we call it anthropogenic man-made isotopes. And that it destroys your chromosomes, your DNA, and your cells every second. Your body has to try to repair that. It can't keep up with it. Particularly because you're bioaccumulating the same as the whales. And that's why the whales are so emaciated. There's still food in the ocean. But because when you get so much in your body is vulnerable to pathogens and viruses, same as the mammals and animals. So let me do this again. I'll get through it. So you got 1 million atoms confirmed of xenon-133. You got 20 million particles, which is even worse. This is parts of the meltdown. They could be neutron sources too. But let's say there's a pulse of energy a second. That's the minimum it can be. You can't be an iodine-131 unless you pulse energy every second. That's the minimum requirement. Now, it's only got a short half-life, but it still has to pulse energy every second to qualify as an iodine-131, right? It has to be man-made and pulse energy every second, almost at the speed of light. It's a very energetic isotope, by the way. Okay, bear with me. So that's 20, and now the Fisher story, according to Simon Fraser University, is it has 10 pulses of energy a second. Well, it doesn't work that way. It's a very energetic, each atom particle is going to pulse energy, minimum, every second. It's the same attributes for iodine-129. So 220 million atoms of iodine 120. These are per liter. That's per liter. This is per liter. This is square meter. All right. We're getting there. Now we're really getting somewhere. This is madness too. So each of the isotopes are making a plume identical to that. This one is Cesium-137 at 1 million to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air. This model is only based total when it stops at 31 days. So all of the isotopes are producing the exact same plume type model. That's the xenon model based on 20 days. The iodine-131 will look identical to Cesium-137. They all travel together. And so each of these are studies on different isotopes. And there's many, many besides these. Okay, so I'll do this again. So you got 1 million atoms of this, you got 20 million atoms of that, you got 220 million atoms of this, you got 10 plus million atoms of that per cubic meter of air. These are liters. You got Cesium-137, which is this model right there. You had 500 billion in Tokyo with 36 million metropolitan. And this is just a single isotope we're talking about. Bear with me. So this is 134 cesium, 137 cesium. And these are around 20-day models. This was 10 million atoms per cubic meter of cesium-137, which is that model. Data from Seattle area may be withheld by the feds for national security purposes. This is, you paid, you gave them the authority, you gave them the equipment, you gave them the monetary to go out and find radioactive fallout when there's an event, and they're going to withhold it because the nuclear industry is so powerful in the United States. That's not why you had that department. The department was to find the radiation, and they did. They found it, but they didn't want to tell you. They withheld that documentation. Just because they withheld it, does that mean it didn't happen? No. And because it happened, this was the Xenon-133, which was bumped up to 1 million atom per square meter underground. It doesn't travel by itself. Okay. Neither does the iodine-131. It's going to have 10 times more 132 and 30 times iodine-133 in that same 1 liter sample. It's going to have 100 strontium-90s compared to every 137. So the 132 iodine, which is 10 to 1 ratio of iodine-131, and the 133 iodine, which is on a ratio of 30 to 1 of iodine-131. So it's 30 times more iodine-131. Or 133 than it is 131. The iodine 132 and 133 are 9 times more effective at ionizing and radiating the thyroid gland. The thyroid gland are 9 times more effective. And the numbers, like if you drink a liter of this, you're producing radioactive hormones, or even a glass of it for the rest of your life. And if you're a child or a small animal or a mammal or something like that, you have the exact same attributes. If you're in any of the species, you're going to have close to the exact same or worse attributes. Okay. And then there's 31 times more iodine-129, and from a separate study from Ottawa, from the University of Ottawa in Canada, that's quantified. This is the Cesium-137, was 1 million to 10 million times pre-Fukushima levels. That's 20 days there. That's going to have 100, it's going to have 100 times more strontium-90, 60 or 70 times more strontium-84, 85. These are bone seekers. And so you're going to be bioaccumulating all of these isotopes. But you have the short-lived ones, which do, even the short-lived ones like the iodine-131, 132, 133, the damage is forever. But, like again, because the cesium, 137, which is this model as 1 million, 10 million atom per cubic meter of air, is a gamma also. That can end up in your thyroid too. Or a lot of it will certainly end up in your heart. And there's massive heart attacks throughout Japan. That's going to be true for the species. And so the strontium-90, strontium-85, and the plutonium, americium, neptunium, and everything else that's traveling in the exact same plume is a bone seeker for you and the species and your children, your friends, your elderly, your loved ones, the most important people in your life, the most important, your pets. Every species, there's no species with an autoimmune trigger to defend against it, right? And so recently, this whale in Belgium and the one in New Zealand, the last two die-off live streams that I've done, I highlighted these two in particular. This is severe emaciation of a keystone species that can eat, and does eat, over 300 other species, and doesn't belong in Belgium, by the way. They've never seen one there before. And so when this one showed up there, it's not that there's not some species out there they can't eat. It's the bioaccumulation of radioactive fallout in the body mass. They have basically leukemia. Even if they find species and eat it, they wouldn't be able to uptake the nutrition. Eventually, they won't be hungry. They're just so sick. And so when they're found in these conditions, there's nothing in their stomach. They're not able to uptake nutrition anyway. They're not hungry. And you're seeing their shoulder blades sticking out. You see this peanut head. You see the rib cages from the other pictures. Now, we've covered that. I'm not going to go down that road tonight. Because you polluted and you broke the food chain right away. That's why you broke the soup of life. And so every glass of the ocean waters and fresh water, typically, well, salt water in particular, rather, would be a billion creatures. In a glass of water, a billion creatures, just a single glass of water. And 75 to 100 million creatures in a glass of ocean water is the phytoplankton. That's the basis of the food chain, the oxygen chain, the carbon sequestering chain. That's 52% of the oxygen in the entire planet, by the way, is made in just one ocean, the Pacific. Chernobyl, the ocean was 600 miles away. Fukushima was just a couple of hundred meters downhill. And so you have bone seekers and thyroid seekers, for instance. The thyroid is going to supply like all your functions for your body, and it's going to produce hormones that will get stored in the pituitary gland in your brain, radioactive hormones, and radioactive stem cells from your thyroid or your radiated skeleton. So if you're a child or a young moose or a young tiger or a young baby or a young porpoise or whatever species, you're also producing, as you're developing, radioactive hormones and radioactive stem cells. Now, if you've done that into a laboratory, you would say this technology is a biological weapon and that this technology needs to be contained at all costs. Because it's nuclear industry, and they have manipulated legislations so that nobody, only the nuclear industry, has the ability to make it illegal to poison you with radiation. They're legally able to do this. This is not illegal to do that, even though it's unconscionable. And that the world will eventually acknowledge this at some point. And if it had acknowledged it a long time ago, like when Dr. Sternglass was warning humanity, we'd still be in bad shape, but we wouldn't be in catastrophic extinction level shape. This is an extinction event. Because you blanketed the entire planet with with every isotope imaginable. And there's over 1,000 that you're worried about. And so typically they'll acknowledge mostly cesium, which is just a single emitter type. There's 4 types of emitters: gammas, alphas, neutrons, and betas. Gammas are really nasty for your thyroid gland, producing radioactive stem cells. And this will cause absurd amount of diseases and illnesses and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries. Right? You're producing hormones that dictate the function and development of the bodies of all species. So we have 46 million birds we're on to that never showed up again this year, which has a million-year history of raising their fledglings here and going out all day long and getting food, capelin and anchovies and squid and sardines and krill and everything else, and bringing it back to their fledglings. And then after 24, 27 days, the fledglings are starting to get into the water and fly a bit. And then they'll be feeding for another. Now you got 200 million birds here, or plus, feeding all day, coexisting. And pre-Fukushima, it wouldn't be unusual to see 5,000 birds every square mile at this time of the year, because 46 million large birds raising their fledglings, their hatchlings, and then you have all the insect-eating birds, etc., etc., etc. It just was our planet was incredible pre-nuclear industry. It was insane. It was magic. We have fantasies right now about finding a planet that looked identical to what our planet looked like pre-nuclear industry. Right? We dream of finding another planet with 8 million species, which happens to be what we had here on this planet. Okay, are you with me so far? So when I went out and done 6 years of research expeditions, the species to your left were there in 2011. They were gone within a couple of years. A lot of these species died off in the first year or so. And so the species to your left are now exterminated. That's why I went back for an extra 5 years. The first year we went back and discovered, my pictures are behind me, and this is what it looked like pre-Fukushima. Imagine that disappearing. Right? It's insanity. That's what I looked like in 5 years ago. I got poisoned severely. My Geiger counter, when I was living right there, was... by the way, where's my Geiger counter? Was always at least around 400 counts per minute. So we've done 6 years of research expeditions, covered the entire coastline, 27,000 islands, and the species to your left are now exterminated. That's an extinction event. But because we refused to acknowledge the reactors melted down, we refused to acknowledge the radioactive fallout. Or not me, not the people that regularly comes here, not my regular viewers. And it wasn't always sunshine and lollipops. It wasn't always. There was no color on the beach, only Zoid. Like all the species to your left are missing. And you would never go ashore at high tide, at low tide, because you would have to walk through all these species. That's a very dangerous thing to do. It's easy to fall and break. Well, you're going to hurt yourself. There's a 19-foot tide exchange. Trying to get to the high tide line, you were going to hurt yourself. So you would wait for the tide to come back up, and then you would go in your little Zodiacs or whatever, and you would put up your beach line. Because the standard practice in those 27,000 islands with a huge tide exchange every 6 hours, you needed to stabilize your boat, so you would put your anchor out, and then you would put out what you call a beach line. You would run a line and tie onto a tree, and that way your boat wouldn't be changing with the tide all the time and could get drag anchor, and you could lose your boat and all your gear, and maybe even worse. And so the species to your left, though, was an incentive not for you to try to go walk up there. It just wasn't worth your time. It was way too dangerous. But the radioactive fallout from Japan, that's 20 days of radioactive plutonium. This is 20 days of plutonium-2, but it starts off as neptunium-239. So walking on these, you can see all the mussels, they disappeared. All the starfish are disappeared. All the invertebrates, all the shellfish. There was 480 species of worms. There was 700 algae in the tidal zones. It was a spectacular coastline, right, the Pacific coastline. There were 74 species of sea anemones. Each species came in multiple vibrant colors, the same as the starfish. There was close to 80 species of starfish. They all came in multiple vibrant colors. And you would never land your Zodiac like mine on a beach. You wouldn't get close enough to it because you would stab the shit out of it with the sea urchins. At one point in my diving career, I used to pick 20,000 of them a day, the 3-inch only. There'd be football fields right there where you're looking right now. And it'd be looking like this, and it'd be looking like that. each rock to my right wasn't unusual to be covered in every species. It was magic, eh? It really was magic. There was around 70 species of sponges. There was just an unprecedented, unimaginable, and then the shellfish were just something else. Now that's gone. Was that word? Would you rather have all the species or nuclear power? You can't have both. And now you don't. Nuclear at some point will wipe out all the species because that's how the nuclear industry works, right? It was magic, and now you have nothing. And then one of the things that they alluded to a single time was I was on the ocean at that in July the 7th, 2016, doing research expeditions at that point. And so they couldn't deny it at one point. And they actually came out and said that all the species, cancer was spreading from one species to another species. And the scientists said it's beyond surprising, like a virus. So cancer spread from one species to another species, and that's why all the species had disappeared. This is the official version. That's one of the few acknowledgments. Generally, they refuse to acknowledge there's any damage to the coastline. They refuse to do it. They can't come out and actually say it. They can't blame it on their fantasy, their version of climate change. Climate change is real. It's 80 years. When you think of all the nuclear wars you had, you call it nuclear testing. This is only 19.5 days. This was Stanford University, I believe. And this is only based on 19.5 days, 468 hours. Right, and then another model based on 20 days of plutonium that had decayed, right? Because the decay from the americium is 2.5 days. This model to your left is 20 days and 21 above me of plutonium. So that's the decay from, I'm imagining that's the way they're, in order to downplay it, right? But all the models, this is 20 days, 19.5 days, the whole planet is covered. And that's why the species are gone. Now, there used to be 30,000 insects at the high tide line. And so the migratory birds, they're showing up emaciated everywhere because when they come ashore, there's no species to the left. So they can't supplement their diet. And the 30 million insects at the high tide line don't exist anymore post-Fukushima. All right, you with me so far? You feel me? You feel me? I got 135 views last night on my video, so I'm shooting for, I got 140 last night, so I'm shooting for 150 views in 24 hours on this video, and 10 thumbs up. That'd be pretty cool. Huh, I got 13. Holy shit. I could die now and be happy forever. Now, they banned all the food, and not just Fukushima Prefecture, but 14 prefectures, which are the big prefectures, which is half the country. They're the big prefectures. Each prefecture is producing at least close to, rather. Fukushima is still producing 1 billion pounds of rice a year in an incredible nuclear wasteland. And the whole country, particularly even Tokyo, the food is still banned today by 14 countries, 240 kilometers away. The radioactive fallout, though, the food should be banned worldwide, and the fresh water. And so we got a real problem. And pretending that this is not happening, and then having what they call, now they want a nuclear renaissance in order to really downplay. And what, I got 8 people on my show that I've been doing for over a decade, 5 days a week? 8 people. That's just pure desperation. That's pure desperation to do that to me. I got even less now. I got 5 people. I love it. Oh, I got 6 now. How can someone with a personality like me only have 6 people on my show? You got to come here just because of my personality, for Christ's sakes. I got a good sense of humor. I think I do. Maybe I'm delusional. Maybe like all the nuclear scientists, I'm delusional. I got 7 people. That can't be real. 5 people, maybe. That could be real, but not 7 people. How could someone as old and miserable as me have 7 people on my show? That can't be true. Backing up, with numerous data endorsements from the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization, the International Atomic Energy Agency's officials, the main global body, that never happened. According to data presented by the Japanese government, agricultural soil in Fukushima had comparable radiation dose rates to soil in New York, London, Hong Kong, and Seoul. I can see that with all the radioactive fallout, but that's not what they're talking about. They're saying there is no radiation. Because radiation occurs naturally, Dana. Yeah, but there's the natural stuff, we're already acclimated to it through genetic superior selection. That's why we coexist with, like we can't exist without potassium, magnesium, iron. We're made, that's stardust. That's what we're made of. All the species are made of that. None of the species are made of the uranium, plutonium, americium, neptunium. And so everything is tritiated. The tritium, all water on the planet now is tritium. Tritium is just radioactive water. It's not just radioactive. That's the worst case scenario, by the way. And all the water, because of the radioactive fallout, symmetrically, worldwide, after 30 days, in every model of radioactive fallout, just ask the whales. You better hurry because they won't be around much longer. But that happened. Despite the fact that officially, I'm a big fat liar. I was 160 pounds my whole life, and then in 2019, with 400 counts per minute on my Geiger counter all day minimum. Now, obesity rates doubled in Japan in the first year, which is a marker of radioactive brain damage, right? 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 Just shake your head, don't worry about it. If it falls off, give it a kick, though. Or just send it to me, I'll give it a kick. All right. It's complicated stuff. Oh, that's there it is. I got it. So if you see this on TV, then to the average person, because they watch TV, that's real. But if I came out and says, I made this picture, by the way, in video, 2013, I think it was, close, like the fourth quarter of 2013. And all I asked was, does anybody really believe that they're 150 feet above the stump of reactor 4 to our left? Because that's the official picture today. That's the official videos today. It's the official story to get everything out of the fuel pool. Okay, so back to the poll for a second. This is important. That's fast, man. That's like, holy shit, Dana. Slow it down. There you go. All right. Is the nuclear industry's perpetual radioactive fallout from 1,000 fuel pools lethal to all species on this itty-bitty only planet Earth we got? All right. Hang on there. So one thing we know about food is typically grown on a farm. Hang on. kind of important concept I got for you. Just bear with me. Nothing fast happens around this neighborhood. All right. Oh goodness, I think we're there. Here we go. It's never mind. It's important anyway, so let's talk about this for 1 second. I'm ready. Uptake of cesium and strontium-85 by grapevines. So they know that plants suck up radiation. And you can go out and you'll find nothing but study after study of plants, and they suck up radiation. Fruit plants, that's wheat plants, fruit plants, and they acknowledge any species will suck up radiation. Potatoes and tomato plants, etc., etc. If it does to tomatoes, it'll do it to every other vegetable, right? Okay. And that irreversible heart damage for children with 50 atoms per kilogram. Now you can put 200 million atoms on the head of a needle, you can't see it. So how is the consumer, the people that are just trying to live their lives, which is appropriate, and enjoy their time on this planet, supposed to protect their loved ones from an industry that is surrounded by nuclear power plants, or surrounded by farms. So every nuclear power plant, except for a few, when you start looking deep into it, you'll notice that they're almost all surrounded by farms. And so that doesn't make much sense, because they got to be aware that grown food by nuclear fuel pools, the fuel pools are hemorrhaging radiation, and then the nuclear plants are surrounded by farms. So why would you have a fuel pool? Is the nuclear industry's perpetual radioactive fallout from 1,000 fuel pools? There's 1,000 fuel pools, and the majority of them are surrounded by farms. And the dumps are too, by the way. And the fuel reprocessing sites, this is... this Hinkley Point, the one they're going to build now. Almost all nuclear power plants are surrounded by farms. So they're destroying people in supermarkets in the cities where they're shipping this food. They don't generally like to sell it local because they don't want to have a statistical amount of illness. Now, it's not just cancer, unfortunately. There's heart problems, liver problems, lung problems, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline. There's Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes, Down syndrome, schizophrenia. Hey, Miles. I'm good, thank you. So they're trying to poison us. Everywhere you look, that's what the nuclear industry is up to. The reason they're surrounded by farms is because of bad intentions. It's unconscionable. This is one of the reprocessing facilities, one of the oldest ones in Europe. Well, France has been doing it for a long time, right? So this one, which is Windscale, they changed their name to Sellafield because they had a breeder reactor, a plutonium X oxide reactor, melt down in 1957. And there's still 8 million liters a day going into the Pacific Ocean. Japan allegedly is collecting everything and filtering it, but if that was true, then Sellafield would use the same technology, right? And well, we know it's not true. You can't filter radiation because you end up with a meltdown in your filter. Duh. So why is almost every nuclear power plant surrounded by farms? Because this industry entire legacy is predicated upon evil, deceit, dishonesty, deception, misrepresentation, and assault upon every species. Every fuel pool, every nuclear plant has a fuel pool doing this all day, and those plumes, each plant will make a plume over 30 days that covers the planet. It's not an accident that almost every nuclear power plant is surrounded by farms, and every nuclear power plant will make plumes like this in 30 days. There's 1,000 of them. This gets assimilated into every species. Instead of having 8 million species, we're down to about 1 million. And like all the whales of every species, is not just right. It's not just killer whales like I was showing you earlier. It's every species of whales. You got all the gray whales currently severely emaciated, and they were emaciated last year in a 12,000-mile southerly. Last year they ran south 12,000 miles, and the ones you're seeing last year were emaciated. This year they're extremely emaciated. This year there's no mistake, and they're not going to be here in 2 years. And that the radioactive fallout is covered all the planet, not just where the whales migrate. And so the radioactive fallout that we can show you, that this is unassailable, this is incontestable documentation. All the whales are emaciated that we're covering. I don't just cover emaciated whales, by the way. That's just this news cycle. Hang on. Oh, looks like we got lucky on the first try. Damn it. That one's good. All right. So the idea is to do the lectures like this in the universities, but hold back some of the information so that the cocky ones who don't know me can ask some stupid questions, and I can come out and boom! Particularly professors and academics. And then so when somebody tells me they're a professor, right, and they deserve prominence at these universities, you're going to run into that. You know you're going to run into that, right? How do you deal with them, right? How do you bring them down to your level? How do you get them down to your level? Do that again. That went weird. That's better. This is what there's no good playing friggin' games with me, because I think I got every argument nailed down pretty good. Former professor convicted of bribery. So not every professor is a good professor, unfortunately. There's not really a lot of professors when you think about it. Professor convicted of assault and battery. Left-wing professor convicted of doing something unconscionable to a 13-month-old baby. When research becomes another teacher, academic going after their student. Professor convicted of DUI for the third time. Not once, not twice. Convicted of falsifying assets. Convicted of theft by swindles. SE crimes. Can go to Hong Kong, though. Ivy League professor convicted of wife's death, convicted of exposing himself to multiple women. I'll just pick out some choice ones, right, and have it sitting there ready to go. Poisoning his wife, $700,000 NASA frauds. Big incentive, right? He almost got away with it. Everybody else did. He didn't kick back, I guess. Convicted of spying, will not appeal, 5-month sentence. So not every professor is squeaky clean. And every professor will be called upon to cover up. Harvard professor convicted of abuse. This was a psychiatrist at Harvard University for abusing his students. If they wanted to get their grades, you had to do certain things with the Harvard professor. Right, so when you start realizing how many professors are just sadistically have been convicted of crimes, MIT professor, Harvard professor convicted of stealing $600,000. I always used to think of the professors as the shakers and movers, right? And then Harvard, Yale, and Stanford, Oxford, MIT, which is where I studied online when I was in a hospital bed for a decade. That's when all this stuff became, their classes every day were available online. I listened to it 10, 12, 14, 16 hours every day at these lectures. And nuclear was one of my favorite. And then I started to realize, wait a second. Why are they lying, right? Because I had such a vast interest for so long. I started realizing, at one point I had 7,000 lectures on nuclear. And so I'll pick out some of these choice ones and have them there in a pile. And there's all kinds of crazy crimes that they commit, eh? I just gave up because I had more than enough to prove my point. But I could have been collecting that for days and days and days. I probably should have. They're not all squeaky clean is what I'm trying to say. And Harvard professors, that's like 3 now. And that was just in a short few years. That's 3 Harvard professors convicted of crimes. It's just absurd, isn't it? This is a law assistant professor convicted of assaulting a 70-year-old taxi driver. Just utter contempt, eh? Over $20. And so when they had a nuclear meltdown, even today, all the academics, professors refuse to acknowledge there was a nuclear meltdown. It's crazy, right? Radiation occurs naturally, Dana. No, man, we had an event. Because radiation occurs naturally. That's why, so they're saying that the radiation of Fukushima and New York and Hong Kong and London and Seoul, South Korea, is from natural, not man-made. The Fukushima peaches would therefore be no more radioactively contaminated than those grown in a London back garden. Is that why the food was banned by 55 countries for a decade? Is that why the media to the right are pretending they're on top of the building that doesn't exist to your left? I don't know. The Fukushima peaches therefore would be no more radioactively contaminated. So covering up an event that covered the whole planet, imagine how bad Japan's got to be. It's not just heart problems, right? Or not just cancer. You can easily tie, it's absurd, like diabetes rates for children were 6 in 10. And the head of the Tokyo Medical Clinic said they were expecting diabetes in the Fukushima children. Okay, let's talk about it. Soil in the United States can also become contaminated from natural radionuclide. Yeah, but it doesn't become contaminated from natural. natural radiation is harmless. It can't become contaminated from natural radionuclides. Because natural radionuclides are not an issue in a normal environment, right? Fukushima is not natural radiation. Fukushima was meltdowns and loss of fuel pools, which were total maybe 36 reactor cores melted down in 4 buildings at the fuel pools. The French government plume model. In 2021, the FDA agreed that according to their standard surveillance sampling measures in the United States, food imported to the United States from Fukushima posed no food safety risk to consumers. So the radiation went away in 10 years is what they're saying. It doesn't work that way. They followed up in 2023 by sampling 51 samples from the area and found none contained detectable levels of cesium, so they were only looking for cesium. So why would you only look for cesium? And how could cesium disappear in less than 300 years? But you got, the biggest byproduct of radioactive fuel rod is the curium isotope. The UK also lifted its own restrictions on Fukushima imports 2 years ago. They lifted the imports on baby food and cereal. And who mostly eats cereal is children. And who eats baby foods? Babies. 2 years after that, Boris Johnson removed the restrictions for the rest of the population. So the first restrictions removed from the nuclear wasteland in the United Kingdom was baby food and cereal. If that's not genocide, what is? If that's not attacking the most vulnerable of society, what is? If that's not unconscionable, what actually is? And then to conflate it with natural stuff, with man-made stuff, is another routine. Because the United Nations International Atomic Energy Agency, UN, criteria for contamination is based on natural, not man-made isotopes. So it's not even based upon stuff that comes from a nuclear reactor. It's based on the elements from nature, which we're already acclimated to through genetic superior selection. Does that make any sense? Does anything I'm saying make any sense? It doesn't seem like it sometimes. It doesn't seem like it sometimes. Peaches with Harrods cost nearly $33 a piece, while the average Georgia peach in the United States costs $1. By selling here, they might just be fast-tracking their fruit to a better reputation. By selling radioactive food from a nuclear wasteland to people that are complacent, is fast-tracking their fruit to a better reputation. So the people that write this stuff clearly deserve to be in jail for the rest of their lives. But it's not illegal to poison you with man-made anthropogenic radiation that you don't have an autoimmune trigger to defend against, that nobody has one. When I first heard about the peaches, my gut instinct was no thank you. But now I realize the Fukushima food was tested within an inch of its life, and likely mine. I trust the science on this one. Trust the science. Regardless of all the negative nuclear association. Well, yeah, like what? This is an opinion, and the views expressed by the author are not necessarily those of Degenerate Scientific America. By Kate Graham Shaw. Kate Graham Shaw. She's a journalist. Did you know that? She's pretty. And she wants to kill you. She's a journalist with United Nations. So a journalist from United Nations wrote a story in Scientific America to say that it's just like a banana and a potato chip and walking in the sunshine and sleeping next to somebody. It's hard to comprehend any of this. And then her sources are the government and UN. How do you argue with? And look how well placed she is, right? She's a journalist with United Nations. And you get her phone number, United Nations. Hi, Katie Grimshaw. Thank you for your article. You're such a hero. Consumers get to taste and buy Fukushima product that oversee food fears amid food safety concerns. Consumers get to taste. Wow. Oh, my goodness. I was thinking about flying down there and doing it because I get to taste food from a nuclear wasteland. At oversee food fears amid food safety concerns. Why frame it that way? It's been taken overseas to places like Singapore and Bangkok and London to assure them of the safety of the food. So tasting the food is how you prove the radiation is not bad. Wow. How do you beat that kind of science? Fukushima-grown peaches, grapes, and rice are among the products being promoted at these overseas events, which are aimed at dispelling rumors about the safety of the food from the nuclear wasteland. I bet you I'm convinced. I'm like, wow, really? Sweet. So if I taste it and it tastes good, then that means it's not radioactive. Gotcha. Even if it's grown right alongside of 1-ton bags of radiation in a nuclear wasteland where no one's allowed to live, and they go back and harvest, they go in there once a week to maintain their fields, right alongside of 1-ton bags of radiation. And those 1-ton bags were some of the stuff they picked up in this field. But it's only 3% of the land. The hills weren't picked up like topsoil. They scraped up a centimeter of topsoil. It was the official story. They changed that number to 2.5 centimeters a few months ago, by the way, right out of the blue. But for 13 years, it was 1 centimeter. Go out and measure 1 centimeter and try to scrape that up in your topsoil all day long. And it's 48, we covered a story last night, they spent $48 billion cleaning up. Now they're going to grow food on it. But they never stopped growing food right alongside it. We know it's for harvest because he's not wearing a stupid, useless, idiotic paper suit. The move follows the discharge of treated water from the Fukushima No. 1 nuclear power plant. The first batch of the diluted treated water was released August the 24th, 2023, Dana. You fear-mongering. Is there a date on this? Yeah, November the 13th, 2020, October the 2nd, 2023. And of August 24th of 2023 is when they allegedly, that's the first time anything got out of the reactors. Nothing got out of these reactors for the first 12 years, clearly. You don't have to believe me. That's what the journalists say, Dana. The journalist's not going to lie. ABC Cecilia Vega, now at the press club at the White House for Australia's biggest media. And the rest of those extremely well-paid journalists, incredible journalists who go out and interviews rock stars and celebrities and sports athletes and everything, they live a fantasy lifestyle. All they had to do was stab you in the back and your loved ones. And everything's good for them now for the rest of their life. Being evil pays, man. It pays big time. All of them are making close to $1 million a year. So this was a picture from 2011, day 4. And any academic on the planet looked at it would have said, well, all those reactors are melted down, and the fuel pools. There's around 36 massive reactor cores Each one of them equal to about 100 Chernobyls. Don't worry, we'll get CNN and ABC and BBC and CBS and CBC and all the media world, big media world, want to come out and say that everything is just fine and Dana's a fearmonger and we need to destroy him. 40% of the workforce at the plant worry about radiation issues. 100% of them are the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society, the immigrants who don't speak the language. More than half of those respondents said the fear of their bodies coming in contact with a radioactive substance at a nuclear meltdown site. You don't have to come in contact. You're going to be coming within 1,000 feet of the sources of these reactors. You come within 1,000 feet of it, you're getting horrific doses for at least the next 100,000 years anyway. And so telling lies is the only thing they're good at, and they are good at it. There's not how's 5,000 people going to work at a nuclear meltdown? How does that work? What are you going to do at a nuclear meltdown? Who wants to die today? Who wants to die in the next 20 minutes? Raise your hands. $50 bonus. The nuclear scientists want you to think they're there. The nuclear scientists are not going to Fukushima, I can tell you that much. Rediscovering the best of Fukushima local products through innovations. And look, they got crows in the background. Ever hear of AI? Before the disaster, Fukushima was one of Japan's biggest agricultural producers. Not one of it was Japan's biggest. It's the biggest prefecture in Japan. And it was notorious for 1.4 billion pounds of rice a year. It still grows that. It just has to ship it to your countries because Japan doesn't want nothing to do with it. They don't want to get sick and die. They leave that up to all your friends and loved ones. Now it's resilient farming communities helping consumers enjoy the region's tastiest products once again, while the reactors are still melting down. Customers will understand the vegetables are safe if they see the local area and know about the product. Well, my aim is to restore agriculture and tourism. It's the reason why, in addition to farming, I built a restaurant, a farm shop, a processing plant. I like to create a facility where people can come and have fun in a nuclear wasteland, get sick and die. And it's not illegal. Let's see Iwate City, which is a well-known nuclear wasteland. After the earthquake, I ended up connecting with a lot of different people. Everybody fell in love with the products for the nuclear wasteland. Everybody did, really, in Japan. Like everything you're seeing there is like some pro-nuclear fantasy narrative, some kooky weirdo, pro-nuclear. Many of them thought it was a shame that such good quality products couldn't be shipped. Can't be shipped because it's a nuclear wasteland. Why would you think it was a shame? Why wouldn't you agree with it that you don't want to ship food from a nuclear wasteland? Oh, because he found a way, like there's all kinds of incentives for the governments for him to be evil, to go there and be a farmer farmer. Is there a difference in Japan between a farmer and evil? They wanted to help me send them all over the world, just like they did with the farms around every nuclear fuel pool worldwide. His farm is now an agricultural regional hub where local farmers take their fresh radioactive vegetables to be sold or transformed into radioactive food to poison the unsuspecting consumers. Being evil, it pays, man. It pays. Like, I bet you, with my personality, if I was pro-nuclear, I'd be rolling right now. They'd be jetting me all over the planet. Incredible Fukushima products, I'd be like Veritasium. Incredible Fukushima products get like 12 million views on every video just because you're pro-nuclear beyond reasonable. Veritasium For CNN, he produced a video where he equated everything with bananas. Whether you were stood by a fuel rod and your organs were melting, he equated it with bananas. Whether you got cancer and you're in the hospital, he equated it with bananas. But he conflated everything, like he downplayed everything by saying it was equal to this many bananas. It was so absurd. I came out and attacked him hardcore too, right? And didn't matter. He got millions and millions. He made probably 50, 60, 70, 80,000 off that one video in advertisement alone, not counting. But it was so despicable that somebody could do that. Of course, he was a doctor and a professor type personality. A French chef and a restaurant owner in a nuclear wasteland. You can eat 100% safely in a nuclear wasteland. And where he's to, he's probably got to drive past 1 million one-ton bags every day to get to work of radioactive fallout. Ripples of Fukushima, Hong Kong will ban more Japanese products if radioactive water is released. 2023. Hong Kong will immediately ban the import of aquatic products. Wait, what? You didn't have the products banned? You know that Fukushima already melted down, that they lost all the inventories right away. And in 2023, you don't even have a ban? So like Hong Kong, China, South Korea, Taiwan, Japan, and the International Atomic Energy Agency, nuclear industries, all worked to enhance themselves synergistically to promote tritium as the only emissions ever to come out of Japan's Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disease factory. This was a coordinated, and so they pushed that narrative, and then so people started going out and protesting the tritium. And those people, of course, were put on a pedestal. They were put in TV. They were put up on YouTube. The mainstream media promoted them. Google algorithms promoted them. Facebook algorithms promoted them. And they created more protesters were protesting tritium-3H. Not 3H even, but just tritium. The man-made is tritium-3H, right? So not even that, they just tritium. It did get mentioned once or twice, and we covered probably 400 or 500 stories about it over a 1 month period, where it was dominant and every day in the media cycle, news cycle. All the media worldwide participated in the story. And then any protesters that were artificially created, right, by the propaganda of just tritium. So the assertions was, as usual, but more pronounced, was that nothing got out on the tritium, and the tritium was contained. So nothing got out of there. This was 2012, early 13 picture to your left. And the picture to your right of 2013, they're videos actually, right? But this particular depiction is just a picture. It's just a fraction of the media. That nothing got out, even today, the official story is nothing got out of the building to the left, and that it looks exactly like this right here. They picked up 30 million one-ton bags, but nothing got out. Whatever did get out is tritium, Dana. But none of the models are tritium models. They're plutonium, americium, cesium, iodines, etc., xenons, kryptons. None of them are tritium models that from the original first few years. Everything is tritiated right now. What have I got here for you? Bear with me. It could take a couple of seconds. It's only madness. What's the big deal? Well, it's a genocide, and I can't go along with the propaganda. I don't understand why they hate us so much. The nuclear industry, right? All I can tell you is they do. You might be surprised at how much they actually do. Let me explain it, hopefully. At one point, I'm going to have to fix all the wires. I kind of had them fixed, but they screw up my headphone. I got to get a patch. Oh, I got a patch cord there I can use. I'm going to have audio. This is ABC, Cecilia Vega. I'm going to adjust the volume, hopefully.
1,500 highly radioactive fuel rods. 1,500 highly radioactive fuel rods inside this pool. They've got to move them outside of this reactor into a safer location.
Okay, so how many, raise your hands if you think she's 150 feet above reactor 4 stone, give me a thumbs up. If you don't think she's 150 feet above the stump to the right, give me a thumbs up. That way I'll know who do and who don't.
We are here in...
This is CNN. Now she's gonna tell you she's at Fukushima. They're both telling you they're at Fukushima.
Inside Reactor 4 at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant.
Sorry. The mouse never does that. Normally I could just get right on it. CNN.
We are here inside Reactor 4 at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant.
So we're here at Reactor 4, which is that building, at Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. And why would the media do that if it wasn't an extinction event, right?
The division.
This is Arnie Gunnarsson. Let me turn that down. The division he ran made the racks for the fuel assemblies for the fuel pools at Fukushima. So if he doesn't know, I'm going to play it, that they're not at the top of Fukushima, who would? He done it for 70 identical reactors.
The division I ran built nuclear fuel racks for boiling water reactors exactly like Fukushima. And
that's Arnie Gunnarsson.
1,500 highly radioactive fuel rods.
Sorry, Miles O'Brien.
Hello and welcome. I'm Miles O'Brien, the science correspondent for the PBS NewsHour.
To
see it firsthand, we had to suit up. The long-term solution here is to remove and secure the nuclear fuel. At Unit 4, they have begun that process. This reactor was shut down for maintenance when the tsunami hit.
So he's pretending he's at Fukushima Reactor 4. Now this is what it looks like at the top of the building. It looks like behind. I got put behind Arnie Gunnarsson.
now, the division I ran built nuclear fuel racks for boiling water reactors exactly like Fukushima. And
Unit 4 has always been my biggest concern. If you watched our website, on the very first week of the accident,
He promoted what's his face, the guy who attacked me. A real scum buggery.
I was saying that if Unit 4 were to catch fire, you'd have to evacuate Tokyo.
So if that happens, right, you had to evacuate Tokyo. And so he made these racks for the assemblies for the fuel pools for the 70 identical reactors in the United States. So if he didn't know the fuel pool was gone, who would, I wonder?
You know,
He's talking about Chernobyl. Hang on, Ernie Gunnarsson.
when you compare Fukushima to Chernobyl, Chernobyl may have released 20 or 30% more into the air.
So he says Chernobyl was 20 to 30% worse than Fukushima. Let me do that again.
You know, when you compare Fukushima to Chernobyl, Chernobyl may have released 20 or 30% more into the air.
I mean, holy smokes, right? There's evil and there's people like Ernie Gunnarsson, Helen Caldercott, and Christopher Busby, and Katie Shaw, and being evil is trendy. So what they're doing is illegal. They can be convicted under racketeering. They can spend the rest of their lives in jail. But their instant reaction is always to come out and lie, no matter. This was a WIP, Waste Isolation Pilot Project, when they had a nuclear meltdown in 2014. I had done a presentation on the documentation, and they took a chunk of that, and it was actually good stuff, and put it up on the major media in New Mexico, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and called me a conspiracy theorist. This is WIP.
These levels of radiation are just above natural background.
So she's saying the emissions from WIP, Isolation Pilot Project, was equal to just above natural background. It doesn't work that way. You can't conflate natural and man-made.
At the WIP site.
It's
And
worse.
so there is no expectation that those measurements for you or your children or anyone else will show exposure on a lung count. They're down in the levels of licking your iPhone charger. And I'm not trying to be funny. I'm trying to equate radiation exposure to something that your iPhone charger. And I'm not trying. They're down in the levels of licking your iPhone charger. And I'm not.
They're down to the level of licking your iPhone charger. And because they're so confident that the population is incapable of articulating or comprehending anthropogenic man-made radiation, that they make these types of assertions. And here's this one here. This was in a Nuclear Regulatory Commission on March the 16th, day 5. And they called him in to explain Fukushima to everybody. And they basically took the fifth. But the job is to explain to you the radiation. So instead of they're the experts. I'll adjust the volume.
We're here to get a briefing on the ongoing crisis associated with the nuclear power plants in Japan. I'm very privileged that we have the executive director for operations at the NRC here, Bill Borchardt.
I couldn't speculate on that.
An expert, a true expert as well.
Again, I wouldn't wish to speculate.
So we feel very blessed that you could come and stand in until the chairman comes, and we really do welcome you.
Again, I can't speculate.
Well, teaching all of us the lessons that we have to take away from what is happening.
I couldn't speculate on that. What we believe is a significant amount of fuel damage in the three operating reactors, units 1, 2, and 3, which were operating at the time of the earthquake. and then because of the spent fuel problems that are in Unit 4
Right.
of that reactor facility. All of those factors taken into combination, if that same type of source term, that same type of radiological problem existed in the United States, our recommendation to state governments would be to evacuate
Okay.
out to 50 miles.
Well, that's a really good point, because I'm asking you, do you know how many people live within 50 miles of San Onofre nuclear power plant?
I do not know.
Well, I'm going to tell you how many people. 7.4 million people.
7.4 million people. Dun, 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 bear with me. I'm getting there. So, the media's response, of course.
My name is Martin Fackler. I am the Tokyo Bureau Chief. And
Martin Fackler.
my name is Martin Fackler. I am the Tokyo Bureau Chief. And the title, as we just heard, was Challenges and Opportunities After the Fukushima Nuclear Disaster, this crisis management. And the question of what do you tell your public? You know, I mean, do you tell them that there's a serious nuclear accident, or do you play it down? Do you try to cover it up?
Do you play it down? Do you cover it up? This is Stanford's response. It was June 8, 2011. So this happened on March 11, 2011. March, April, May, June. So June, Stanford University came out. Some bizarre assertions.
Stanford University.
We're very, very lucky today to have two real experts on this topic. The first is Matthew Wald from the New York Times.
Although it's a mess to try to cope with a meltdown, or three meltdowns in the spent fuel pool right after a tsunami.
Why would you have Matthew Walls at Stanford University when you got all kinds of nuclear scientists who now works for the Nuclear Energy Institute, by the way? Kevin Camp, Beyond Nuclear, claims that the fuel pools didn't melt down. Right, to your left, that didn't happen.
High-level radioactive waste storage pools, and incredibly, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the nuclear industry, has given short shrift to the safety risks of pools. So these are catastrophes waiting to happen. There's the slower motion boil-down scenario on the pools, but there's the fast motion drain-down scenario. And one instance of that we can point to in the United States several times now over the decades is the near drop of heavy loads. And one of my favorites, because I'm from there, Southwest Michigan, is Palisades Atomic Reactor, October 2005, nearly dropped a load weighing 107 tons. It dangled over the pool for 2 days. They nearly overrode the emergency brake on the crane, which would have been catastrophic. You could drain these pools pretty much instantly. The waste would be on fire in a matter of hours, and the radioactivity releases would dwarf what we've seen at Fukushima Daiichi. There's no radiological containment around the pool.
How are you going to dwarf Fukushima? So what he's saying is Fukushima didn't melt down, see? Clearly, Fukushima melted down. This is MIT's response. This was the 15th of March, day 4.
I'd like to welcome our own students from nuclear science and engineering and other members of...
Right, so that you can see his little video at the top. I put these pictures in there.
the community here at MIT and also visitors, I think, from elsewhere.
And shortly after 3:30, there was a hydrogen explosion in the building of Reactor 1. So when of that explosion?
These weren't hydrogen explosions. The explosion is because the reactors are already at 1,000 plus pounds per square inch, and they need 1 million gallons of water each minute to stay cool. And so if you don't get the water, which is 4,500 one-ton pickup trucks, it's equal to 4,500 one-ton pickup trucks dumping 1,000 liters each, 2,200 pounds, each minute. 4,500 one-ton pickup trucks passing your front door every minute. So it's dependent on external power to do this, right? Pumped out water. It's 1.45 million one-ton pickup trucks of water a day at the rate of 4,500 a minute. And so if it doesn't get that, this absurd amount of water. Imagine you got to control the keys for 1,450 one-ton pickup trucks. Organize that. So it's a lot of water, right? Every day, let alone minute. It's an enormous amount every second. It's 70 one-ton pickup trucks have to zip in and dump 1,000 liters each, 70,000 liters a minute, a second. So each nuclear plant is dependent on 2 external gas, oil, and coal plants. If you got rid of nuclear and just had a gas and oil, you're probably producing more energy than a nuclear plant can. Nuclear is an insidious industry. And so what happens is the pressure builds up and it explodes. This is not hydrogen. You're not introducing oxygen. I guess in a little way you might be able to see it. There's an effect as it explodes from the pressure. You'll see a flash. That's because the hydrogen is exposed to oxygen. And so it'll detonate. And because now it's risen up to 2,000, 2,500 pounds per square inch and explodes. These are not hydrogen explosions. They have no cooling, no circulation. It's going to melt down and explode anyway because the pressure is going to build.
Not long after, the evacuation zone was extended to 20 kilometers radius. On Monday,
as you know, the radioactive fallout covered the whole planet in 20 days.
At 11 a.m., so this is now on the third day,
Day 3.
there was a hydrogen explosion of building of Reactor 3.
Now I'm putting the pictures in there. The little video he's actually producing, you can see it. So here's Reactor 3. This is not a hydrogen explosion. This is the same thing we just talked about, where it's already at 1,000 pounds per square inch. If it doesn't get 1.45 million one-ton pickup trucks of water every minute, the heat builds up and it just, it's like if you put pressure in your car tire, at say 3 pounds a minute. And right, you just clipped it on, walked away. What will happen eventually is the tire will blow up, right? There's too much pressure. That's what happened to the buildings.
In the meantime, Reactor 2 fuel rods, what is reported to have been fully uncovered, and they quite soon began to inject seawater, borated sea.
Now, you couldn't go near number 2, right, because reactor number 3 had ejected its fuel pool in reactor cores, and same thing with reactor 1 and reactor. Just bear with me 1 second. Now, I produced full presentations of those videos 2 months ago for the anniversary this year. We've done quite a few anniversary shows. We've done Harvard University. We audited Harvard's presentation, Stanford's presentation, MIT's presentation. And we've done a whole bunch of Fukushima anniversary. Yeah, so if you go back here, 14th anniversary, 14th anniversary, 14th anniversary, 14th anniversary, 736 mystery pictures. These were also basically anniversary. Then there was 3 Mile Island, 46-year anniversary. We done a major presentation on that. 14th anniversary, 14th anniversary, 14th anniversary, 14th anniversary. And then the preamble, inside the bizarre mind of the pro-nuclear. And so I think 4 days before the anniversary, I done 4-day preamble. Then we done like 14 shows on the anniversary, 14 days. And then we also went in and done Stanford, Harvard University, Stanford, MIT also, right? Oops, sorry. All right. Let's get back to this one.
Water. At 6:14 a.m. on Tuesday, that's today, of course, but since they're 13 hours ahead of us, that was quite a while ago now, there was a third explosion. This was in reactor 2. This was inside, as far as we can tell, inside or near the containment. And
the containment. The explosion wasn't in or near, and you couldn't tell because you couldn't get near because reactor 1 and reactor 3 on each side of reactor 2 had melted down and detonated, right?
in the meantime, reactor...
I'm sorry, had detonated.
Another worry that arose was on that same day was that the reactor 4 building, reactor 4 is adjacent to reactor 3, was observed to be aflame. And
this picture is important because it appears to show people at the top of multiple nuclear reactors that had melted down. That's simply not true. There's no, you can't, it doesn't matter how stoic or brave or stupid you are, your organs are going to melt.
So this was sort of at the same time that radiation levels were increasing further. There was a lot of suspicion that this fire was in the spent fuel pool.
So they're suggesting that's the spent fuel pool of reactor 4.
However, since that time, TEPCO has said that there was an oil leak in a water pump and that was what was the cause of the fire.
So, and you can see the original picture I just had there of reactor 4. The fuel pools are at the very top of the buildings. That's where they were claiming to be. There's no top to the building. The buildings are typically 190 feet. Well, they're exactly 190 feet tall. They're 19-story buildings. They're 65 meters. And when you got 1, 2, 3, 4 in a row, even if just one of them blows up, you can't get near any of them because it melts your organs within a few minutes. Just because you're ejected decades of reactor cores from the fuel pools of each of the buildings all over the site. It's crazy, I know. Crazy. Crazy. The best way to describe the nuclear industry is a bunch of serial killers hire a bunch of serial killers that hate all the species and let them loose on us. That's the nuclear industry in a nutshell. And growing food in a nuclear wasteland. Every nuclear power plant fuel pool is surrounded by farms. If that doesn't give you raise your eyebrow, what is it that'll raise your eyebrow? I got it there somewhere. I'll find it for you. So there's no way to get around the fact that the whole planet got buried with multiple types of isotopes documented. And pretending that it's not, that you're immune to this, that this won't affect you and your loved ones till the end of time, is a terrible way forward. Officially, both of those never melted down. But I can assure you that those pictures are real. This really did happen. So I'm still trying to... I'm still trying to come to terms with the research expeditions that I've been on by myself for many years, from 4 to 5 months a year. I still can't come to terms with what I discovered there. Because I used to be a commercial diver on that coastline for years and years, and to see all the species disappear, I can't live in denial, right? I can't pretend it's never happened. And I'm going to make sure that you can't either, just to be an asshole. No, because the world is dependent upon you, not me. I'm just an old broken man. They're not worried about me. They're worried about you. They're worried that you will use your voice. They're terrified of your voice. And you're like, anybody that watches these videos regularly, of course, there's nobody in the journalists or universities or academic communities who's going to beat you in a conversation about Fukushima. There's nobody. You're like, no way, I'm too nervous, I stuttered. No, there's no way they're going to beat you. Because anybody can stick around for more than one video of this stuff, my goodness. You're the toughest person alive. So, let me see here. So I was looking for whales again today, and I've covered a lot of coastline now this summer on the bike. Still haven't got the boat fixed. And ideally, I need 2 new motors. I got to try to. We lost all the research on the ocean last year. We supplemented it by traveling the coastline. We covered 3,000 miles of coastlines and interior 1,000 ponds. And there was one pond where we seen a little, I think it was 5 ducks, all from the same family. Just one pond. We seen any life. There was no fish jumping in any of the ponds. And they're all out in the middle of nowhere, these ponds. So living in denial is not an option for me, unfortunately. Not that I would change anything, it's just that living in denial is not an option. Alrighty, so let's get out another few minutes here and we'll call her a night. Oh, excuse me. Sweet. James got another song posted. Now, I put a link in the description to the first song tonight, the opening song. That's a crazy cool song, by the way. And James just posted a new song. We're going to play that. You have a great night and a great day tomorrow. I'll try to be back here tomorrow night. We're going to have rain tomorrow. I'm exhausted, just exhausted. And I want to be able to get out on the ocean and do research so desperately, but even though I'm not field studies, right, is important to keep up the research. But we know all the whales are emaciated. I want to get out there and drop the underwater drone on the emaciated whales and fly and do a flyover with the other drone and just have that documented of these emaciated, beautiful creatures that the future generations will be denied in a few years. It's like we're seeing the same thing with all the species of whales. It's not just the gray whales, but they're getting the attention right now. All right. Thanks for everybody. Have a great night. Great day tomorrow. Thank you for finding the time. It's heavy, heavy censorship tonight. If you see very little views on my videos, it's because they're generally really good videos with documentation. To me, a good video is a video full of just an incredible amount of documentation that by the end of the show, your brain is very active. It's very honest. You're weaponized against the nuclear industry. If you've never been here before, you're here all the time. You're absolutely a weapon against the nuclear industry. Because you're like me where you just can't be in denial. And that's what each one of these are about. Every show is a win. Every song that James posts is a win too, because music will come back and haunt this industry. Most likely longer than I will. Have a great night. Hugs for everybody. We'll see everybody on the other side. Don't take any radioactive food. Take care.
Release complete.